This is John Zaninovich. Welcome to Move My Mass. You'll be hearing from great guests talk about balancing life and being fit. Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Move My Mass. Today's guest is an amazing woman. Her resume is long enough to be an episode all on its own. She is a wife to a very energetic husband, a mother to three very busy boys.
Yep.
Yeah. Registered nutritionist, a 20-time marathoner, 16-time Boston qualifier, multiple ultra run finisher, which for those of you who don't know, those range from 30 to 100 mile plus runs. She did rim to rim to rim Grand Canyon, which has, I think, close to 12,000 feet in elevation gain. So obviously quite accomplished as an athlete and a nutritionist. So I would like to welcome Nicole Giumarra.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thanks.
So obviously a lot to talk about with everything you've accomplished and what you do. But my first question as a nutritionist and with everything going on social media and everybody wants to lose weight. What is your least favorite fad diet? What, if you were going to be like, I cannot stand when people talk about this. What is that?
That's a tough one. I mean, that's a whole episode, that question right there.
I bet it is. Yeah.
God, I have so many least favorites. I'm not a fan of diets at all. Any restrictive dieting. I'm not a real big fan of the keto diet right now. That's probably the one that gets the most hype and press in the media and social media, mostly because it is a highly restrictive diet, for one. Two, it can be, if done, there are ways, I suppose, you could quote unquote make it a healthy keto diet. I don't advocate the keto diet, I'm going to throw that out there. But most people, when they do follow a keto style of eating, it's a lot of really high saturated fat meats, cheeses, which we know saturated fats contribute to heart disease, increase our risk for heart disease, because they are the one type of fats that can increase our LDL cholesterols, which are our bad cholesterols that contribute to heart disease. So,
and is that because it gives them an excuse to eat like that? Because a keto diet doesn't have to be like that, correct?
It doesn't have to be.
It's like the Atkins diet.
Sure.
When that was happening. It's like, I get to eat a cheeseburger without the bun,
right,
and eat as many as I want.
And throw cheese and bacon on it. And,
right.
And maybe wrap it in a piece of lettuce. Okay, like there's a vegetable. And it's very low in fiber, which fiber we know is really important for our gut health and keeping our gut healthy, keeping our bowels regular, also for heart health. It's really low in fruits and vegetables. There's not a lot of produce in a keto diet. And we know fruits and vegetables are really important, not just for vitamins and minerals, but also for phytochemicals, antioxidants that are also really important for our heart health and just our overall health as well. So I feel like it's a way of eating that is not sustainable for most people. I don't know many people that have been on the keto diet for a long period of time, right? Because as soon as, anything rolls around that involves carbohydrates, birthdays, holidays, parties, eating out with friends, it starts to become really difficult to sustain. So I don't love that one because not really healthy, good for the body long-term, not sustainable. And then it just, you may lose weight, but then you're right back to where you started once you stop.
Right.
That diet.
And I wanted to start off with that question because of social media, podcast, or just in general, friends talking. Everybody's looking for that quick fix, right? Or even if it's not a quick fix, they're looking for what can I enjoy while I'm dieting, if they want to call it a diet. So yeah, I wanted to get that one out of the way, that the fad diet or trendy diet, whatever you want to call it. So what, for the general not the athlete or the high performance endurance person, just the general, what do you recommend? Like what approach to nutrition do you recommend?
I really recommend and try to impress upon people that I work with to have a very flexible mindset as it relates to food and eating. And not, and when I say diet, and I mean diet just in a pattern of eating, right? Not necessarily a restrictive diet. So when I say diet, that's what I'm referring to as a pattern, a way of eating. So a diet that allows for flexibility and enjoyment. So food is not just what we eat to fuel our bodies and nourish our bodies, but it's also, it's social, it's emotional, it's surrounded with traditions and families and friends and holidays. So I think to have real balance, I guess is the right word, with food is to be flexible, to allow all foods in your diet while still respecting foods that might be better for your personal and individual health. So, I know for me, I feel best. I feel physically and mentally my best when I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. I eat a lot of whole grains and beans and lentils and fish and nuts and things like that. That makes me feel my best. So I try to eat that way most of the time. But I have a sweet tooth. I like ice cream. I like cookies. I like candy. I like wine. I don't deny myself those things, because the minute you start denying those things, what's the one thing you want and you think about and you crave those things that you're denying and restricting, right? So by allowing flexibility in your diet, I think that that's the best way to be sustainable. And that's the approach that I take with people that I work with too.
And I kind of knew that, following you on Instagram, and I saw your post. I'm like, I have to have her as a guest because Move My Mass is about balance. It's not all, with working out. It's not, I have to hit it hard every single day.
Right.
You know what? It's okay to go to lunch with your friends. And whoops, I didn't get that 3-hour ride in. I actually went and enjoyed my family and friends because you need that balance.
Absolutely.
And I see you approach nutrition like that, which is extremely important. There are a ton of people you can go follow if you just want to eat grilled chicken breast and broccoli.
Yeah. That's boring.
It is boring and it's not sustainable.
Exactly.
It works. It gets you to a goal, but it's not for long-term living.
Right.
I don't, or a habit or lifestyle. I don't think it can be sustained. I can't sustain it. Some people can, but I can't.
Some people can. And the thing is, I think you pointed out something interesting is that, yes, there's a lot of ways to get to a goal, right? There's not one way of eating or even dieting for managing weight that, there's not one way to do it. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? Like you can do it a lot of different ways. You can eat chicken and broccoli and brown rice every meal, or you can, go keto, or you can, there's a lot of ways that you can do these things. But I think the question for most people comes to, is it sustainable? Is it something that you're going to enjoy? Because if the answer is no to both of those, then I think you have to ask yourself, well, why are we doing this?
Right. So back to trendy diets or fad diets, and I don't know if this would be considered a fad diet, but intermittent fasting. What's your take on that?
Well, it depends. That's a very dietitian-y answer to say it depends. It really depends on the person. First, I'll say the research on intermittent fasting on humans is still somewhat in its infancy. A lot of the research that we have has been done on animal studies, which we do a lot of animal research because, a lot of times it's not ethical to do nutrition or health research on humans. So we have a lot of animal studies to back up a lot of things, which is fine. But we can't always translate that data 100% to humans, right? I mean, we're not the same. So we have some data that's coming out, some studies that are coming out that are looking at intermittent fasting compared to just normal eating for weight management. And over the long term, and keep in mind, even these studies aren't even that long, right? Like we think long term, we're thinking 5 years plus, but these studies might be looking at 12 weeks, 15 weeks, maybe a year, maybe. And it's not really it's not showing to be any different than just a regular pattern of eating. So while it might work for some people, that's not to say it doesn't work for some people. It can, sure, it absolutely can. But also, I think when you shorten your eating window, you're probably consuming fewer calories. And at the end of the day, for weight management, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not exactly It is calories in, calories out, but it's not as simple as that. There's a lot of other factors that get in the way, like sleep and hormones and genetics and activity levels and health issues. But this is a very long answer to your question.
That's okay. We have nothing but time.
So intermittent fasting can be a way to minimize your intake, right? Because if you have a shorter eating window, it's pretty hard to cram in. Let's say if you need 2,000 calories a day and you're only eating for 6 hours, it's hard to get 2,000 calories in 6 hours.
I could do that.
Well, some people could do it. I mean, some people could, but it's hard to do, right?
But yeah, it is. It's hard.
So there's one thing, then I look at it from the flip side too, is that, well, obviously for athletes, I would never recommend intermittent fasting at all. It's just too difficult especially if you're training for performance, it's too difficult to train and stay fueled and recover properly for your training when you're in this a shortened eating window. Or you're fasting for a day. It's just, they're not compatible at all. And then I also work with clients that have eating disorders, and anything like this, it starts to mimic disordered eating, plain and simple. So I look at it from that lens also, that, and that's another thing with any sort of diets, is that I look at it from, gosh, it really looks a little disordered when you start to think about it. So I'm not a huge fan of intermittent fasting for all those reasons. But if people are interested in trying some form of that, I say, well, why don't you just try a 12-hour window? That mimics more of a normal eating pattern in a day. You're going 12 hours where you may have breakfast at 7 and you have dinner by 7. And then you've got a 12-hour fast overnight. That's a form of intermittent fasting. And I think that that's more sustainable for people in a normal, with normal lives.
Yeah. And you might say I'm crazy when I've done this, is I've done two things, what I would consider a fad diet, that I'm not going to say they worked for me short term. But obviously I can never. Paleo diet was one. I was doing CrossFit for a while, and CrossFitters are heavy into paleo.
Yeah,
I did it, but I did it on a healthy manner. But what it didn't work for me was my endurance. I was CrossFitting while training for an Ironman, and I didn't have the energy to go for my long runs and rides because I wasn't getting enough carbs in and balanced nutrition. Saying that, at the same time, I did lose body fat at a faster pace than my other nutrition programs, short term. Long term, I didn't. But yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work for me long term, and it didn't work for me as an endurance athlete. I have no clue if it would have worked for me in regular life. But that was my one experiment, not even experiment, my one go at I guess, at a diet.
Well, I think your experience is pretty common. You did it for a while. It worked for a while. These kinds of diets don't work for most endurance athletes, like you said, because there aren't enough carbohydrates. But I think that's not uncommon. You have a short-term benefit. But again, it goes back to that sustainability and flexibility.
I play with diets. I don't do a lot of. That was my one time. But I did it just because I was like, what? Because I do pay attention to nutrition. I just want to do something different.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about my body fat or my weight. But just to get out of a rut, I guess. Let me do something different. Let's try this. But I did it right. I ate lean and lots of vegetables. I didn't just go eat meat all day long, which some people do. But what is your approach to because you are training for an Ironman and you're training for multiple half Ironman races. What is your approach for yourself nutritionally versus the general population that you would advise?
Well, I think for athletes, for myself, one thing, and then for athletes in general, especially endurance athletes, the biggest thing that I think that can get overlooked is the fueling before, during, and after workouts. That is so important. A lot of times I think people are, and I really try to focus on making sure that I'm fueled. Anything that's longer, going to be a workout that's longer than an hour. And then sometimes even shorter workouts, just depending on the time of day. I make sure I get, I eat before, I make sure that I've got enough fuel for during, and then I really hit that recovery nutrition. That is a non-negotiable, because when you are training back-to-back days or even multiple workouts in a day, you have to replenish your glycogen stores, which is your carbohydrate stores in your muscles, right? You have to get protein in so that you can start rebuilding that muscle tissue that gets broken down during your training, so that you can be back at it the next day, right? So that's one thing when I'm training, is I really try to pay attention to those, that piece of it.
How do supplements play a role in your nutrition?
They can. So if we're talking, are we talking supplements like vitamins, minerals, or protein powders?
Any kind. Protein powders, vitamins.
They can. So as it relates to protein powders or some sort of supplement that in that category, I do occasionally use them. I don't always recommend them. For some athletes, I have a couple high school athletes that I work with that are male athletes in high school that have huge calorie and protein needs, right? Like those kinds of athletes, supplements can be really helpful when they need so much, right? But for me, I find most days I can get what I need from food. Sometimes I'll throw in, a protein powder. Whey protein powder is really good for recovery. So occasionally, but it's not something I always rely on. As it relates to, and I'm just talking about me personally, right? Again, this is another highly individualized issue or topic of discussion, but and as it relates to vitamins and minerals, I don't really take anything. I sometimes
obviously you have a very balanced diet then.
I try to. And if I
part.
feel like there's some, and I can kind of I have a sense that if I'm lacking in something, I would love to eat more fish. I don't eat as much fish as I would like. Some of it's availability in where we, in Bakersfield and where we live. Yeah. So I do occasionally take omega-3s, something I probably should do more often. Sometimes I take a multivitamin if I think about it.
Right.
I'm just, I'm a little bit relaxed about it.
Well, this is, I think that was a perfect answer for the audience, because people are being overwhelmed with information right now. Mm-hmm. Take this, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Greens, take this green supplement. Mm-hmm. This is where you can get all your greens, and take this protein powder, and which I take the basics, multivitamin, protein powder, just because sometimes I'm not getting enough whole foods in my diet throughout the day. It's just something quick after a workout instead of making a meal.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, a multivitamin is a good insurance policy for most people, especially for men. Not necessarily for women, because the minerals, and mostly it's minerals that we need more of, like calcium. Multivitamins are pretty low in calcium. They're not going to have omega-3s. They're high in nutrients that we get more readily from food, right? Like B vitamins, you get from food. Vitamin C, you get a lot of it from food if you're eating a varied, balanced diet. So, but for most people, there's nothing wrong with a multivitamin. It can be a good, just
not going to hurt anything.
No,
right?
It's certainly not going to hurt. Absolutely not. And a protein powder, like you said, if you're kind of lacking here and there, and if you're training heavily, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that there's a lot of hype right now, and
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And honestly, it's nothing new. The supplement industry is a huge industry. It's been around for a long time. I do recommend supplements for people when they're necessary. But I don't blanketly have protocols that I recommend, people take X, Y, and Z supplements, just because unless we have data that there is a documented deficiency, or in doing a diet recall with somebody, I see that they're not eating certain foods regularly in their diet and they're not necessarily willing to change that, then, supplements can be really beneficial. Right. But I think sometimes people forget that the supplement industry is not regulated in the way that our prescription drug industry is regulated. So, we don't have those safety measures in the manufacturing of supplements. So unless it's been third-party tested and verified that what is in the bottle and on the label are matching up, I think we have to be really careful. We should be really careful with the claims that the supplements make because they're not always true. And there's not really any laws that stop them from, making claims. So
it's super hard not to pay attention to it because usually it's somebody super fit that's endorsing that product. Mm-hmm. It might be their product.
Right.
Even though, they have to buy the ingredients and package it. Right. But yeah, you have this person online that's got 8% body fat, looks amazing, or this beautiful fitness model saying this is what they take, which is fine, but it's overwhelming for the general population to see that and hear it and say, oh, if I take that, then that's where I'm going to end up.
Right.
And you and I both know that's not how it works.
Yeah. And I think too, it is, for some people it can be viewed as a quick fix that if I take this, then that's going to help me get from point A to point B. And that's not always the case, like you said. I do always recommend that people, if they are thinking of taking a supplement, to look for one that is third-party verified through either NSF or Informed Choice for sport. Those are two labels that you can look at.
And what is NSF?
NSF, I'm blanking on what NSF stands for. Is it National Safety Foundation, Sanitary? I'm embarrassed that I don't know that.
That's okay. NSF is, you want to look for NSF.
NSF or Informed Choice.
Okay.
Those are two third-party organizations that do testing on supplements and will verify, the contents of the supplement match up with what's on the label. And they also look at the manufacturing process as well. And that really becomes important for athletes, especially athletes that might be drug tested. They can't be taking supplements that are potentially contaminated, right? So,
correct. Yeah.
So that starts to get important for athletes that might be drug tested as well. So
for me, day-to-day nutrition, it's not that it's hard, but being busy and sometimes planning the meals and getting into meals and what am I going to eat tomorrow to make sure I'm eating right? What's your cheating advice? What's your quick or what's your hey, here's how to make your next day easier on nutrition? What are some of your tips to have people have an easier time eating right? Well,
you said it actually. The first thing that I always recommend people do is have a plan because you can't just wing it, right? If it's something that's important to you that you have, you have things in the house to make balanced meals and to make good meals that are healthy for you and your family, you have to have a plan. That's just step one, right? There's no getting around that. So when I work with people, and I do this myself, is I have one day a week where I sit down and I plan it all out and I write it all down. And now that my kids are getting older, I have to take input from them because they have opinions about what they like to eat too. We talk about, okay, what are we going to have for lunches? Breakfast is pretty easy in our house. Everybody kind of does their own thing. We have everything for breakfast that everybody likes. Fine. Lunches, making sure that we have all the stuff that everybody wants to make for their lunches. Dinners get, obviously, I think a little more complicated for most families that are busy and have kids. And so having a plan, start there, right?
Yeah.
And I think one other thing a trick that I use, and it's nothing novel or new, but having theme nights for planning meals, because then, if you have, say, Meatless Monday, Taco Tuesday, if you have ideas like that, it just narrows your recipe or your cooking plan, right? So if Monday is a meatless day, it might be a lentil soup or a veggie chili, or maybe you're going to make veggie burgers, or maybe you're going to get fancy and do some sort of tofu stir fry. Okay, that's Monday. Tuesday, if it's a Taco Tuesday, but you're sick of tacos, maybe it becomes an enchilada casserole, or maybe you do like shredded chicken in the slow cooker that everybody's going to throw into a tortilla and make burritos.
Yeah.
So things like that, I recommend people use to kind of help guide their meal planning. And I always recommend to plan to not to cook too. So that if you are cooking, plan to make leftovers because those leftovers can always get repurposed. I'm a big fan of the slow cooker for making proteins like chicken, beef, and pork that you can have shredded and use for tacos or burritos or quesadillas one night. And then it becomes, something you can throw on a salad the next day for lunch. So I like the cook once, eat twice kind of method. But then also planning again to maybe takeout is part of the plan, right? It's like I'm kind of a cook for 4 nights in a row and then I'm done. I need a day off.
Right. Yes.
So I always bake into the plan, a takeout where we will plan to go pick something up and bring it home. I also make sure that I look at the calendar when I'm planning, and I recommend people do that because you don't want to be planning to try a new recipe on a night when you got a meeting and the kids have an activity and you're going to have 20 minutes to get dinner together. That's the night to go with something quick, easy. Maybe that's the slow cooker, shredded chicken from the slow cooker and everybody makes a taco and that kind of thing. So it just goes back to having a plan.
Because back to don't try the new recipe on the busy night.
You're right.
Because a quick way to failure in nutrition is when it's not enjoyable.
Exactly.
If you didn't enjoy that meal or the experience of prepping it, it can derail it. That has derailed me before.
Yeah.
You know what? I did not enjoy making this meal whatsoever.
Well,
where's my damn pizza?
Calling Grubhub.
Yeah, right.
But I think now, there's so many ways to streamline even the cooking process. You can get pre-cut veggies at the grocery store. You can get, pre-marinated proteins in the meat aisle. You can get frozen brown rice. There's so many ways that you can make a nutrient dense, healthy meal really quick, right? So I think it's just getting a little more creative and, taking some time to kind of see what's out there and kind of incorporate some new things into your routine. And then it takes practice too. For a lot of people, it's not something that they're used to doing. So I think it does take a little bit of practice. Yes, it takes a little bit more time to make a meal than it does to put something frozen in the oven, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I have frozen meals on the ready because there are nights where maybe I plan to make something and frankly, I just don't feel like it. Right. So that's a night where a pan of chicken enchiladas from the freezer are going in, and that's totally fine too.
Yeah. So
I think being flexible in your meal plans as well needs to be part of it. That, just recognizing that it's okay if you're not going to cook. One thing, we order pizza, I always have broccoli on the side with our pizza, or I always make a salad. So there's ways that you can still fit some nutrition into meals that maybe are less,
nutrient dense.
Less nutrient dense, but
yeah. Because since we sold our business, when we had our business, I was in a routine. I knew where I was going to be eating every single day. It was super easy to eat correctly. Now, every single day of mine is different every day, except for the morning. The morning's the same. But after that, when I'm out and about during the day,
all bets are off.
I might be in the South Valley or North Valley or a lot of driving. And I am not a meal prepper. I've tried it numerous times and a couple things. One, I don't like to eat the same thing that many times. I'm not that good at it. And then what happens during my day a lot of times is somebody will say, hey, let's go to lunch, or things come up where I'm not going to have that meal and I end up throwing it away, and I got tired of throwing away all that food. So for the person that's traveling or on the road, or they just their work day is not the same every day. It can be challenging, and you can tell me how wrong I am on this, but I usually get a good breakfast in.
Good start.
And then I'm winging it until dinner. What I rely on is trail mix. Honestly, I rely on trail mix and maybe a banana or something like that. And I just know how many calories are in that bag. That's scary on trail mix. There's a lot of calories.
Nuts are very nutrient dense.
Yes. And you don't have very many. And so you just have to be aware of that.
Sure.
Like, okay, I've had enough, but that's how I handle it.
Well, I think that's a good approach. I think that you found something that works for you. For people that do travel around and have unpredictable schedules, that's another thing I always recommend is plan for that unpredictability, right? So have things, I have a client that I saw this past week, and she's, a very similar situation where, regular lunches, even packing lunches, not always, it's not always as easy for her either because of her schedule and the unpredictability of it. So, we talked about ways to pack for that, to have snacks, have things in the car, have things in her purse, have things in the desk drawer that when lunch doesn't happen for whatever reason, whether you're driving or your meetings or whatever, that you have something so that you're not going too long without eating. That's one thing that I do recommend people try to avoid doing, is that when you do go too long and you get too hungry, that primal hunger can kick in, and it makes it really hard to make good decisions about your next eating opportunity, right? If you're super hungry and if it's been all day.
Right.
There's a lot of things you can do, like trail mix, and fruit is very portable, even there's a lot of different like little snacks that you can pack. If it's for some people, it makes sense to pack like a little cooler bag so that you have, other things like, I don't know, hummus and veggies and things like that. Or maybe you pack a small sandwich that if it doesn't get eaten that day, it's not the end of the world because it's been in your cooler pack or something. So there's always ways around it. There's always a solution.
Yeah.
So I think you found one that works. But I do encourage, but it takes a little bit of extra thought and preparation. So if it's not something that you're used to doing, people can find themselves, stuck with, well, there was nothing else to eat because all there was a Taco Bell. That's fine. But if that's not part of your plan, if you don't want that to be part of your plan, you just have to take a few extra minutes in your day or in your week to plan it.
Yeah.
I'm big on planning.
And that's, so there's consistent things that you've been hitting on today, and planning is definitely at the top, probably. Getting your whole foods in, supplements aren't a big part of your nutrition program, and it's not a part of your nutrition program that you recommend a lot. It's not that you're against them, but you're a huge whole foods person. Like, get your nutrition through whole foods. People ask me, John, like when I'm at a party, birthday party or a gathering, and they see me eating whatever I want at that party, they're like, oh, I get the comment all the time. You are so lucky you can eat that. You're like, well, it's not lucky that I can eat it. But I tell people, you know what? This is where I eat like this. Like, some people have cheat meals. Some people are super strict all week. I'm sure you've heard of that. And then they have their cheat meal on Sundays, their cheat meal day. They're going to eat whatever they want on.
Right.
I don't eat like that. I tell people, get-togethers are my cheat meals. Don't worry about it when you if somebody invites me to lunch to Luigi's, I'm going to eat what I want there. If I'm going to go to my nephew's birthday party and they are having hot dogs and chips and dip, I'm going to enjoy it.
Good for you.
That's those are my cheat days, if you want to call them that. But it goes with the whole thing that you talked about earlier, is balance. And you have to have balance in your nutrition, balance in your lifestyle, balance in your fitness program. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today, because you hit on all the points that I am all about in Move My Mass and balance. And it's nice to hear from a nutritionist talk about that instead of pitching the super strict, make sure I'm not even going to throw out percentages, but a certain percentage has to be protein, a certain percentage has to be carbohydrates, and a certain percentage is healthy fats, and just be strict. That's not what life's about. And long-term, that's not the way you're going to be healthy.
Right.
So I appreciate you coming on so much today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.